All right, welcome to Module 3. Today, we are going to kind of get our hands dirty and really get into how you build your campaign engine. So, I really want you to think about it this way. We're not really talking about running for office anymore. We're talking about how you actually build out your campaign. And so, we'll take this in a few steps. The first one is how you assemble your team. Then we'll move into how you find your voters, which we're going to call strategy. The other part of strategy is then field organizing. I'll explain to you what that is. Sometimes people just say field. Um, then we'll talk about something really important, which is signs and name recognition. And then finally, amplifying your message. So, again, this is getting into like once you have kind of decided what campaign you're running for, or, you have to start really building out the different pieces. So, the first one, again, is assembling your team. So these are the people who are going to be the blueprint and the mechanics of your entire operation. They are the ones who are going to power your engine and keep it humming all the way to election day. So who really runs the campaign? Well, let's break down the key players for you. You want your campaign to be firing on all cylinders. So, it really boils down to three essential groups of people. So you have your paid staff. And then you also have people who are passionate, who are your volunteers, and you have expert consultants. And each one brings something slightly different to the table, but each is actually really important. So, your staff are the people who do your daily operations and your voter outreach. And so, these are the dedicated paid core of your campaign. Volunteers are people who are more likely to do canvassing, phone banking, or events. If you can pay these people, you want to, but oftentimes you're not able to. So these are the people who are volunteers, and they are driven by a passion for your cause. And finally, consultants bring in specialized expertise. So it might be someone who really specializes in, say, social media or traditional media and trying to do media buys. That's when you pay for, say, a commercial or something like that. They could be somebody who is really an expert in polling. So these are experienced advisors that are often working on multiple campaigns and are not exclusive to you. So just having all of these different parts isn't going to be enough. You're going to have to keep this engine running. And so great management is like that oil in the machine. You've got to build that collaborative culture where every single person knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing and they know that their role is valuable. They know that you value them because none of these things can fall short if you expect to actually win or even to just have a decent campaign. The truth is that, you know, a lot of people won't win, especially in their first election. And so, how you run your campaign is also a measure of your success as a candidate, whether you win or not. And so that's how you create that unstoppable momentum. And it is important because all campaigns have an expiration date. This is not going to go on forever. So you've got to get it going and keep it running really well. So, being a great leader isn't just about winning, which we've discussed, but it is about taking care of your people. And that means you should be planning for the end from the very beginning and actively help your dedicated staff find their next big thing. It is something that people look at, what happened to his or her staff when the campaign was over, where they just left without anything. It is to your credit when your team has what they need to be able to move on to their next job. So the next thing is now that we have the engine built, you really want to do a couple of things to actually go somewhere. First off, you need the fuel, and then you also have to have that destination, which we're calling the GPS. So think of voter data as your fuel, and the GPS is telling you where to go to find those voters. Um, so this should really be your mantra. Like think of it like a laser beam, concentrating efforts on people who can put you over the top. Bottom line, you can't reach everyone. So your strategy has to be a laser beam and not a floodlight. You want to concentrate all of your power on the voters who can actually get you to win. And that's what the laser focus really looks like. So your base is people who are likely to vote for you, and your opponent's base is likely to vote for them. And that's the point here. So you don't want to focus energy on someone else's base. If they're not going to vote for you, don't waste your time on it. One thing that, in my experience, creates the biggest voter turnout is focusing on people who agree with you. Now, some traditional political wisdom will tell you to focus on the people in between, right? So you have your base, you have your opponent's base. It's the people in the middle who will drive that election. So you see this a lot on TV, particularly with presidential politics. They talk a lot about undecided voters, right? That group of people who are in the middle. My personal experience, I think that is a true fallacy. I think that is wrong advice. I think is the problem is turnout, and that should be where your focus is. So, if you get the people who already agree with you to the polls, then you are going to win. Okay. And let me give you a quick example because, again, this goes against traditional political wisdom. But, Republicans have really done well with this, Democrats have not. And Democrats, which I happen to be, we keep losing because of it. So let me give you an example 2024 presidential election. Um, Democrats, again, keep going after swing voters. They keep going after people in the Midwest. We try to move towards the center, doing all of these things to maneuver. We're looking at those people that are called inveterate voters. Those are people who vote every single time, right? So they're looking at who is likely to vote and trying to appease all of these different people who do not are not natural allies. They were never going to vote for us. On the flip side, Donald Trump's campaign focused on who are the people that agree with me, whether they had voted previously or not. So what you saw was a really, really like laser beam focus on men, particularly younger men, but men of all races, men, they understood that their talking points, that the things that Donald Trump was talking about was going to resonate, that these are people who were going to agree with them. So instead of going out and trying to mold and shift and make themselves into something that they weren't, they decided who is already in agreement with us and how do we get those people to the polls. Um, so there's something called persuasion. I just don't think persuasion is the way to go. I think it's a waste of time. I think most people know where they stand on these things. I know how they feel about it. And frankly, if you are a person who can look at someone, and this is just one example, like, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump and go, I don't know. I we don't have time for that. I need people who are more decisive, who are going to turn out and vote in my direction. So that is my experience. That is my advice. Do not go chasing after people. Focus your energy on your base. So now, how do you actually find those people? And it's a really like straightforward three-step process. So the first one is to get official maps of your district, which you usually can do at your local election board, and usually those are just online. You then want to identify public spaces. So, where is it that people are going? So, you want to make sure that when you have a campaign, unless you just have lots and lots of money where you can do the commercials, you can do all these things, but you want to make sure that you're actually talking to people who can vote for you and not just anyone who lives in the area. So, public spaces for me when I ran for office, one of them was I knew that people who lived in my district, their children were going to school in my district. They were likely to be going to church in my district, right? So Friday night football games, I'm in the bleachers saying hi to people. Saturday mornings, I'm at the supermercado and greeting people in Spanish, saying, hi, here's who I am, right? These are public spaces where a lot of your voters are going to be. And these are things that people tend to do in their neighborhoods. So you're not just catching people who happen to be passing through. Um, So there's a lot of ways to do this. Of course, you can also be a little bit more specific, but you can catch a lot of people, and a lot of times just that one-to-one contact, simply asking someone, because a lot of people aren't sitting around engaged in politics like that. So asking someone, connecting with them gets you the vote, and you move on. So the other thing is using those voter lists to identify registered voters. So that's the other thing, is you want to make sure you're talking to people who are actually registered to vote. So here's the thing, if I'm going to a high school football game, I know I've got 2 things. 1, tell your parents, and 2, "Hey, are you 18 yet? Why don't we get you registered to vote if if you can?" And there's some rules about how you do voter registration or not, through a campaign. You don't wanna mix the 2. But the idea being that you don't wanna be out there talking to people who cannot even vote for you. Do not waste a single dollar or a single second on people who will never, ever vote for you. It is that simple. So, going back to that discussion about who your base is, so from an issue perspective, or from a perspective of the person doesn't live in your district or they're not eligible to vote, move on. Your job is going to be to stay laser focused on the voters who can get you across that finish line. So we've got our team assembled, we've got our GPS programmed with a super smart strategy, and now it's time that we put the engine in gear and actually hit the road. So we're going to do some field organizing. So, field organizing is the heart and soul of a campaign. This is when you get that direct person to person, boots on the ground work. It's where you make real connections with voters and turn them into genuine supporters. And ultimately, it's how you win, right? So, when I talk about your base, sometimes people know you, a lot of times they don't, but we're talking about people who naturally agree with you. At this point, you have to tell them, hey, I'm somebody that you naturally agree with already. Help me be the person who wins. So, when you're knocking doors, that's actually one of the kind of tried and true ways to reach out to people, because you know that the house is in your district and you probably have gotten it off of a voter registration list somehow. So, what you leave behind is really, really important. So, think about it. When you get a flyer that's left on your door, because we've all been in that situation, most of the times it's going to go straight into, let's call it the recycling bin, right? Because we're all ecologically minded. But let me give you a pro tip. Think about the refrigerator magnet or that chip clip again. It's that daily reminder of your name in the busiest spot in the house, which is the kitchen. And that kind of repetition on your name recognition is priceless, because name recognition is what it is all about. Now, think about the type of materials that you're using and who is actually printing. If you are a Republican, I don't think this matters quite as much. But if you are a Democrat, it is so important that you choose a union printer. It does 2 things. First, you're gonna get high quality materials that makes you look super professional. And second, it's gonna send that clear message about your values and your support for workers. So, just so you know, if you are a Democrat, people are looking. They will check to see. There's this little symbol that shows up on everything that's printed called they call it the union bug. That's what that is. It's a little symbol that shows up on everything that's printed. And if you are a Democrat and people don't see that union bug, it is a problem. So that is just again another kind of insider tip. If you are going to do this, always make sure that you are using a union printer if you are a Democrat. I do not think that that holds true for Republicans. I have had the conversation with people, and I have felt this myself, where I want to use a small business, or I want to use a Black owned business, or a Latino owned business. There are a lot of reasons why you may think that it doesn't work for you. You need to use a union printer if you're going to be running in a partisan race and you are a Democrat. Can't emphasize it enough. So remember, all of modern organizing is driven by data. So you don't need some expensive software, and there are those out there. Um, if you can afford it, great. If not, look, a simple Google sheet can be incredibly powerful. The problem isn't the type of tool that you have, it's just how you're using it. And so this is a little bit more manual, but at the end of the day, you want to use it to track every door that you knock, every call that you make. This data is going to tell you exactly where you need to focus your efforts. Did you get in touch with that person? Did they tell you, please don't ever call me back again? Did they tell you that they're supporting your opponent? These are people you're not going to take time with, right? So, or you need to say, hey, I need to get through X number of people. You've got to track it. So, yes, it's nice to have a modern software system. Absolutely. Google Sheets can work for you. So, let's talk about one of the most important and visible parts of a campaign engine, and that is signs. They're all about getting seen, they're about getting heard, and they're actually reaching that ultimate goal, which is name recognition. And I cannot emphasize this enough. Name recognition is what you were going after because recognition equals votes. So, where you put your sign is actually really critical. You don't just stick them anywhere. You want to focus on high visibility, high traffic areas. And this is like big, always get permission for private property and know the local rules. The last thing you wanna do is get your signs taken down or get slapped with a fine because, you have your signs in the wrong place. You can actually and one of the things that I did, actually my sister did in my campaign my first campaign, was to pull that traffic data, um, from the local municipalities, and we were able to actually figure out the flow of traffic. I could only afford so many signs. And so we tried to get the optimal size that we could, the number that we could with the budget that we had, and we needed to make sure that they were going to be placed at the right intersections just within our district where people were likely to pass and which direction they were going to be passing in. So we were able to do that again, making a data-based decision. Now, this brings me to a very, very common question. Should you put your picture, your photo on a campaign sign? And again, there are a lot of people who are going to say yes, makes you seem personable, all these things. My personal answer, my experience is the answer is almost always, always, always a hard no. A hard no. Why? Because your face is not going to be on the ballot. Nobody's going to get a chance to go into the booth and go, oh, I recognize her. Let me check that person's picture. And some people are a little more visual, right? So, what they are going to see is your name. The name of this game is name recognition. The sign has one job and one job only, and that is to build your name recognition. And I actually gave this advice to someone several years ago who came to me, and I suggested it. She obviously decided to go with someone else and someone else's advice and put this huge picture of herself on there. At the time, I used to wear glasses and kind of alternate colors depending on, what I was wearing. And this was another Black woman. You would not believe the number of people who, because I did have name recognition and had served in office before, go, "Oh, I had no idea you're running for a new office. I saw your sign." And I'm like, "What sign?" Well, she wore brightly colored glasses. She's a Black woman. If you're zooming by through traffic, then guess what? You think it's me. And so what's interesting about that is she actually did win. It was a district where it kind of been set up. She got all, certain endorsements. There wasn't really an opponent for her on the Democratic side, which she was. And it was a highly like Democratic district. Well, fast forward a couple years, she decided to run for a different office and use basically the same sign, same design, just change the name, which nobody sees anyway, right? Because again, they're zooming down the road when they see these signs, or flipping through a mailer when they see these signs. And she lost. And I just can't tell you enough how your picture is never going to be on the ballot. It's just not. So it is so important to focus on your name because your name is what people are going to be voting for in the end. That is what you need them to recognize. You do not want them guessing as to which person they saw as they were zooming down the road. So this is the this is the kind of the synopsis of this. Um, people assumed it was me, someone who actually had the name recognition already, and that is the key to winning your election. All right, the final piece of the puzzle is amplifying your message. So, you take all of this incredible work, your amazing team, your laser focused strategy, your signs, and you're going to amplify it. Now, this is all about taking your message and spreading it far and wide. You've got a whole toolkit for this. And I mean, nothing beats that face to face connection when you meet and greet at forums, when you go to those public places. And then when you use social media really strategically, you can reach that broader audience that you need to make sure you're touching the voters. So finally, you can go out and get those endorsements from respected community leaders. Their stamp of approval can give you credibility for people who may not get a chance to meet up with you. And if you reach the voters directly, you get their endorsement, which is the most important, right? So endorsements are for people who don't get a chance to kind of touch and feel with you. So there you have it. You have built your engine. You have the strategy, you have the ground game, the amplification. You now have the complete blueprint for a powerful campaign engine. The only question here is, are you ready to win? And I think the answer is yes.